Hello, my name is Jesan Sorrells, and this is the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books Podcast, episode number. Well, it doesn't matter what the episode number is. It's a bonus episode. This is a summer bonus episode. We're going to take a little focus. We're going to take a little jog down the world of or down the road of movies, because there's a couple of different things I'd like to discuss. And if you've listened to this show for any period of time, that Tom and I are huge movie guys. We always find a way to insert assertions or allusions or ideas from film into our literary conversations. As a matter of fact, we've got several films coming up that are on the docket right now that we've already discussed on the show, including The Odyssey. And we will be discussing Neuromancer coming up in September. That's not going to be on Apple TV. That's going to be an Apple TV show. Currently working my way through that book. And so there's a lot of different areas that Tom and I sort of discuss, and film is one of those areas. And there's some larger sort of cultural critiques that I'd like to make about film that I think are relevant for leaders. But I also think that it'll just be a fun and exciting kind of little, I don't know, break from our usual July fare, where we cover deep and serious topics like the Constitution, the Federalist Papers, the Anti-Federalist Papers, and of course our episode that we just did that we released on July 4th for the 250th birthday of the United States of America, where we talked with my friend DeRollo Nixon about the Declaration of Independence. So this is a nice little break from that. So sit back and listen to Tom and I pull our best Siskel and Ebert muscles possible, if that is indeed possible. So I'm going to open, as I usually do when this is a more of a literary pursuit, by reading something that I wrote. So Tom didn't know this, but I do have a Substack that you can go and find. It's called A Voice Crying in the Wilderness. So you can go on Substack.com and look up A Voice Crying in the Wilderness, and you will see all of my writings. No, you don't have to pay anything. I don't have enough subscribers to charge anybody anything. I think I have like 22, if I remember correctly, 22 subscribers on this Substack, because I'm not making it popular. I'm not marketing it. I'm not trying to blow it up. I just use it to work out ideas in public, and then watch other folks work out ideas. By the way, I think Substack is a significantly better platform than Medium. So I would like to read from an essay that I do have published on Substack, a variation of it, called The Sunsetting of the Dark Knight, to open our show today. And I quote from myself to, well, all of you. Movies and superheroes have always gone together, like peanut butter and jelly. Starting in the 1970s, actually really the 1960s, with a campy Adam West Batman, and then continuing into the 1970s with a serious Superman, filmmaking has taken representing the secular gods of superheroes to the general public to all new heights. Christopher Reeve, by virtue of being the first portrayal of Superman on the big screen, is thought to embody the iconic and virtuous image of what a superhero actually should be. At least he was until the 1990s came along. And then you had Michael Keaton, who starred in Tim Burton's Batman. Again, by virtue of being the first non-campy, quote-unquote, serious actor to take on the mantle of Batman, Keaton's representation of Batman is considered by many, in a particular generational cohort, to be the iconic and darkest image of what a superhero, here's that term again, should be. But times change and tastes change and movies evolve. The superhero movie, of course, has evolved, and now we live in a cinematic backwash in 2026 of the first Iron Man movie, released in 2008, with all of its various and sundry offshoots and sequels. Of course, with this evolution came the rise of the Dark Knight in film, with the three most iconic movies to ever accurately or realistically ground the character, now played by the British actor Christian Bale, in 2005, 2008, and 2012. Following those releases, it was 10 years and a multiplicity of Marvel movies later that The Batman was released in 2022 to little fanfare and low grosses. And this is how we will set the table today. I want to talk about Batman and Superman, but I also want to talk about Project Hail Mary, and I want to talk about Masters of the Universe. And I want to talk about what all this means for heroics, what all this means for generational cohorts, and what all this means for all of you listening out there, because I think there's something here that we all should be paying attention to. Now, you may not know this. Actually, many of you don't know this, just like many of you didn't know until I just said it that I had a Substack. You might not know that a long time ago, I used to write movie and cultural reviews for a website on the internet. No, I'm not going to give the name of the website. I've already looked for it, and the person who owned it, who I do know, he's done some other work with me on some other projects, has taken it down. Um, so it is no longer available. But I do have all the original writings because I write things on Microsoft Word and then I upload them to WordPress because, as my mama used to say back in the day, God bless the child who holds on to his own IP. Now, now, I did this writing back when everyone was still captured by the MCU. The Irishman was being touted as the return of Scorsese, Pesci, De Niro, and Pacino, and I was a little bit younger. I learned in writing for this film and culture website, and I learned a lot by having to organize my thoughts about film and culture and even the prevailing winds of politics, how those all sort of interact in our modern world. I also learned a lot about working with people who weren't nearly as organized or disciplined as I was in writing, much less in organization, time management, and how to scale a business. It turns out that you can learn a lot more from your failures than you can from whatever nascent successes might come your way. In the process of banging out 500 to 1,000 words a day, every day, for weeks at a time, I had an epiphany, which I still hold on to this day. No one in the film critic world ever examines the cultural trends behind why some movies work and why others do not. And when the few critics who do seek to tie viewership, audience attention, and popular political positions to movies do right, they are almost universally ignored for not expressing the quote unquote right, whatever that may mean, opinions. The last critic to even touch on this area, whose name you would recognize, was Roger Ebert. I mean, yeah, Leonard Maltin did try a little bit, but Roger Ebert was really the pioneer of this. And the best one to ever write such larger cultural analysis, the best critic to ever write such larger cultural analysis, whose name no one ever mentions anymore in any film conversation, was the very, very caustic writer who even pissed off Orson Welles, Pauline Kael. She didn't care who you were. She was just going to write the truth. But today on the show, Tom and I are going to go there as we've gone there before. So, like I said, today we will talk about movies because leaders, culture, movies, books, music, these things matter. To paraphrase from the movie High Fidelity way back in the day, it's less about who you are sometimes than about what you like. And of course, to talk about what we like, I've already mentioned him a couple times today, is my usual partner in crime, partner in cinematic crime, Tom Libby. How you doing today, Tom? How's it going?
It's going it's going well. I was so many times during your opening there, I was half tempted to just throw a couple of jabs in, I just wanted to because it's funny like that you say I was thinking about Pauline Kael for a minute. I mean, she died what, 2000, 1999, 2000, 2001,
Yeah,
somewhere around
it's been
there,
like
right?
30 years. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's been 25, 30 years. I often, it's funny because I don't think of her until a really bad movie comes out. And then I wonder what she would think of this. Because I know what Roger Ebert and Siskel, I didn't know what those guys would think of it, right? Like, but she, to your point, she was very vocal about poor cinema. Like she was very vocal about, I am not a Marvel fan. So
Hmm.
you're talking about the whole Marvel super
Oh,
universe,
yeah.
whatever. And I wonder what she would think of all that sequentialness of the Marvel movies and the tie-ins and the like all this stuff that Marvel requires for it to be classified as a Marvel movie or whatever. Because I think she would have just ripped it apart. I really think
Yeah.
she would have hated
Oh yeah.
all of it. She would have hated
She
all
would
of
have called all of it trash.
it.
She would
Yeah,
have had nothing to do with any of it. Maybe the first couple of movies, like Iron Man, would have maybe caught her eye, maybe.
I
But
agree. And partly because of that, think about Marvel didn't do anything. What, the very, very first Marvel movie came out in 1944, 45, somewhere around there with Captain America. And then they did nothing after that for until 2008 when
right, yeah,
well, and when I say they, I don't think Marvel actually had anything to do with the original Captain America.
mm,
It was just a Marvel character that somebody made a
yeah,
movie out of. But I'm not
yeah.
sure Marvel had anything to do with it until 2008 when Marvel decided they wanted to be in the movie business, essentially.
Hmm.
So,
Well, Disney partially acquired Marvel,
right,
and when
right,
Disney acquired Marvel Comics, they were going to mine all of that IP. Like it was just they were just
right.
going to do it, right? And I remember so the original Captain America movie. Yes, there was a very so. Here's the thing about movies and like superheroes. And I start off with movies and superheroes because I didn't want to go into like radio and the other representations. But superheroes were on radio back in the 30s and 40s and 50s primarily. I mean, that's where you go from, old time radio shows, which I'm also a huge fan of. That's another sort of thing that I like The Shadow, who knows what
Yeah,
evil lurks in the hearts of men, all the way to The Lives of Harry Lime, which starred Orson Welles, which was a spinoff of the spinoff from the Third Man book, or not, but well, yeah, book and also movie, with that zither music by Anton Karas. Oh my God, incredible. Um, but you go from that, the Lone Ranger and Tonto, which, okay. But like you go from that in the 40s and 50s through to sort of the rise of television, and that's where Adam West shows up with Batman. And George Reeves, I know people are going to object. They're going to be like, well, what about George Reeves, in the 50s on TV? Yeah, okay, sure. George Reeves, Superman, some people will say he was the original Superman. Um, but Marvel, I mean, so Marvel Comics started in the 60s, under Stan Lee and Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby and all those guys. And they didn't really start getting traction until the 80s.
yeah,
And they did some significant things in the 70s. Don't get me wrong with Gene Colan and, oh gosh, Chris Claremont's entire run on X-Men, which started in the 70s and all of that. But they didn't really pick up until the 80s, when John Byrne was doing things was writing and drawing on Superman over at DC. Marvel was trying to figure out how to best compete with them. And you're right. Like one of the first superhero movies was Captain America. That was in the late 80s. And then Fantastic Four. Like
yeah.
there is a version of Fantastic Four floating around that is horrible from the 1980s, early 1990s. And and then, yeah, like nobody ever thought you could actually, and this is how, because I was a comic book guy for 10,000 years and I still love the medium. I just don't buy them anymore because they're trash now and we've wrecked the medium in America.
Yeah.
Oh my God, we've wrecked the medium in America. Don't get me started on that. But the, as a comic book person, I didn't think there was any possibility of ever getting these characters on film. So when Iron Man showed up, I was like, oh, this is good. They actually like have figured it out. This is going to be a thing. And and then of course when Chris, what's his name, who played Captain America, when he showed up, I was like, oh, Marvel's actually serious. Oh, they're actually going to try to put something together. Are they going to try to do the Avengers? And then they did a Hulk movie that didn't suck, and I was like, we're going to do something. And and everybody who was a comic book person like really got really excited, and that drove a lot of the cultural zeitgeist at least early. But now, 20 years, almost 20 years later, on from Iron Man, now there's no more excitement.
No.
There's no
Well,
more
and
excitement.
again, I think part of it is too like and we talk a lot about the like does the writing does the when you're watching a movie as a person who loves movies, is the writing worth it? Like is the writing
Mhm.
actually worth the movie? And does the actor bring anything to the table? Right? Meaning like, and I tell my friends and family all the time, if you watch a movie and you cannot envision any other actor playing that role because that
Mm.
actor did such a good job, that's the pinnacle. Like that's what you want right there. And that just doesn't happen very often. Like you just don't watch a
Yeah.
movie and say, I cannot picture anybody else doing that role because that person like they made you believe that that role was written for them, right? That
Mm.
that's like, and you see it every once in a while, and there's there's examples of it all over cinema, and the genre
Hmm.
doesn't matter either, by the way,
No.
in my opinion. But I think the superhero movies, it's worse. Like it's under a microscope, even worse. Like
Hmm.
because you just look at it and go, like the Hulk, for example, just as an example,
Hmm.
when we were kids, there was a TV show on about the Hulk.
Hmm.
And by the way, folks, the big green guy was actually played by a guy. This was not CGI, but the guy that they got to play David, no,
Bruce Banner.
Bruce Banner. Sorry, thank you,
Yep.
Bruce Banner. Like he wasn't the stature of like the leading man roles that we think of
Mm.
today, right? Like
No.
the 6'2", like 225
Mm-mm.
pound chiseled whatever guy that you expect to
Mm.
be in that lead role. And again, by the way, I'm not suggesting that this has to be an action movie because we have the same kind of ideology, regardless of whether it's a drama or whoever. We just want this imposing person.
Hmm.
And they picked the guy who played Bruce Banner in the original Hulk was like 5'6" and like 140 pounds.
Yes.
Right? Like I forget the
Yeah.
guy, I forget the actor's name, but he was not a
Yep.
big guy. He was not an
Yep.
imposing person on the screen. He was very, but then when they changed him
Bill
to
Bixby.
Bill Bixby,
Sorry,
thank
Bill
you, thank
Bixby.
you,
There you
because I
go.
actually liked it. I thought he was very good. I thought he did a really nice job at this. And like, but when he changed into the Hulk, by the way, folks, it was a guy. It was Lou
Hmm.
Ferrigno. It was a
That's right.
bodybuilder that turned actor that was just a ginormous man, like this mountain of a man in real life, by the way. It,
Yes.
and it just worked. I thought the whole when I saw the very first Hulk movie that was like CGI and all that stuff, I was
Hmm.
so my heart actually hurt a little bit. I was like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? We have massive human beings on this planet that could have played that role. And you didn't have to because you were trying to make him larger than life and he was supposed to be like
Hmm.
this. It was supposed to be like we're recreating like a dinosaur or some garbage. Like we're trying to create like some like what are you doing? Like he just needs to be freakishly big and freakishly strong and green because of the radiation. I get it,
Right.
like the green part.
Yeah.
But like you turned it into like a modern version of a dinosaur. I mean, come on, stop.
Well,
Stop.
and I think to your point,
That's why I have such
I
a problem with the Hulk ones too, by the way.
yeah.
Sorry.
No, well, and I think to your point, like so superheroes have always been cartoonish. Let's
Yeah.
just acknowledge that for
Sure.
just to say right. And to your point about Lou Ferrigno, um, who, by the way, for those of you who don't know, you should look up like the Mr. Olympia videos with him and Schwarzenegger going back and forth in the
Yeah.
80s. It was kind of ridiculous between the two of them.
Yeah.
But I think you wind up in a weird spot with superheroics, right? Because you're already asking the audience to accept something about this person, right? That's beyond where they are already at. So and this is why they weren't putting Bill Bixby in the gym. They were going out and getting Lou Ferrigno because that was the best they could do. And if they'd had CGI in 1984 or 83 or whatever the show was on, they would have CGI'd the hell out of Bill Bixby, right? They would have. If they'd had the capability
Of
to do that.
course.
So you're asking the audience to accept something larger than life. And we're going to get to this, by the way, when we talk about Masters of the Universe, because my son and I went to go see this movie a couple of weeks ago, and he was well, let's just say his review was very interesting. But as a member of the Gen Alpha crowd, his review was he's 9, so it was like okay. Um, but you're asking the audience to accept something larger than life. You're asking them to accept a fantasy as reality. So you're asking two things of the audience right away. This isn't like Westerns. Like I've heard people say that superhero movies have replaced Westerns as a genre of fantasy. But the Western was based on historical reality. Now, we can argue about whether that historical reality was exaggerated or not. I
Yeah.
mean, you could talk about John Wayne and the Searchers, or you can talk about Shane, or you can talk about um,
Clint Eastwood.
Clint Eastwood in The
Another
Good, the
one.
Bad, and the Ugly. Yeah,
Yeah.
or the High Plains Drifter. Or you could even talk about the pulling apart of the Western genre in what was quite possibly the last good Western ever made, Unforgiven by Clint
Yeah.
Eastwood.
Eastwood.
Um, you could talk about all that. You could talk about Native American representation. You could talk about Black American representation. You could talk about women. You could talk about environmentalism. You could talk about all these things. But the westward expansion of the United States actually happened. That's a historical fact, right? We can argue over how that's represented and who got rooked where, but at the end of the day, you can't disagree with that. There was never, at least to my knowledge, and I'm going to use Superman. There's never been an alien child sent to Earth from a dying planet to save humanity from itself, with Marlon Brando giving him instructions through crystals. That's never happened. That's a total fantasy element. By the way, Superman, one time I heard it quipped that Superman is the ultimate allegory for Jesus Christ, written by two Jewish kids from Cleveland, which is amazing, actually.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. So I think, to your point, I understand the disappointment, but on the other hand, I'm like, we're being asked to accept all kinds of things in this paradigm. So what the hell? Why not CGI it? And this is why like Guardians of the Galaxy works as a movie. At least the first one does. The second and third one are kind of a nightmare. But the first Guardians of the Galaxy works because, well, I mean, you're already asking me to like float in space with nebulas and stuff. Like, okay, why not? Sure, go
Well,
ahead.
why not have a talking raccoon?
Yeah, why not have a talking trash
By
panda?
the way,
Sure.
where did the raccoon come from? They have raccoons on other planets? Like, what is
Yeah, of
this?
course they do.
I always found that part of it fascinating. You couldn't just make up your own version of a creature. You had to pick a raccoon. I,
It was the 70s. It was the
yeah, I
70s.
know.
Guardians of the
It was
Galaxy
the
comes out of the
70s.
1970s. It was a rough time in
Somebody
The
was
American comics.
very high on LSD when they wrote that stuff. I'm just saying. By the way, out of all the Marvel movies, fun fact about me, and you know how I feel about Marvel movies, by the way,
Oh
I'm
yeah.
not really a big fan, but the Guardians of the Galaxy is probably one of the few that I can tolerate much. I tolerate it really well.
So this gets back to that idea of Pauline Kael and what she would say about these kinds of movies. She would not take them seriously. I think we could
Right,
probably agree on this. She would
right.
not take them seriously as high art. They're commercial, for lack of a better term, nonsense. And she would, I think, like I said, I think she would be just fine with the first Iron Man movie, but then after that, she would get off the table. I even think she would get off the or get off the train. I even think she would get off the train with and this is where I want to go with us today, because I don't really want to talk about the Marvel movies, although we have to because they're just so dominant. They're like the Jupiter in
Yeah,
like the sky of like Marvel's of superhero movies in the last 20 years. Because they had a formula and it worked and it's Disney. So like, give me a break.
right.
But
Well, and to your point about monitoring the cultural wave,
yeah.
that's essentially what Disney did. They created that formula based on what they saw in the cultural atmosphere, and
Mhm.
to your point, and they've made billions and billions and billions of dollars because
Billions.
they understood the cultural atmosphere and how that cultural atmosphere responded to cinema, like to cinema in general. So they saw shifts. They had,
Hmm.
I don't know how the hell they got ahead of some of these with predictive analytics and all that stuff, but they just did. And they understood it and they got it and they got ahead of it. So anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean they've been owning there's a quip about Disney. They've been owning culture since the 1920s in this country. Like it's fine.
Yeah.
Um and and so when you think about it, I think Pauline would have had a much more she would have been much more open-minded to, I think, The Dark Knight. Not Batman Begins. She would have been like, what is Christopher Nolan doing?
Mm.
But The Dark Knight, I think she would have liked that movie. Not because of Heath Ledger's performance. I don't think she would have cared about that. I think she would have eviscerated that as overblown and too much fantasy, too much comic, too much whatever, right? Nobody could. Her critique would have been no one could possibly be that sociopathic and walking around in real life.
Yeah, right. Right.
The problem is that Pauline came from a different sort of paradigm where we think about people. I think of her sort of like a Joan Didion sort of type where she's like monitoring the unraveling, but in film, and she doesn't really know what she's seeing. She's just documenting it and just sort of like throwing it out there. And by the way, I'm saying this as a person who has a book. I have a book that's a collection of Pauline Kael essays. There's like 5,001 of them. It's ridiculous, like the number of like, and I read her writing sometimes, and I'm blown away. Um, but um, but DC, so Warner Brothers, DC Comics, DC Studios went in a different direction, and they could go in a different direction because they have two of the most iconic characters, comic book characters ever created. They have Superman, again, a Jesus allegory. But then you have Batman, and Batman is the character that I think that I want to focus on a little bit for right now, and then we can switch to Superman. But I think there is not enough cultural understanding around who Batman actually is as a character. There's just not. And I think that's because he's a very specific sort of animal. And I'm using that term on purpose. Um, so he's a rich guy. Okay. He lives in a house, a mansion. Okay. His mommy and daddy got shot in the street in a robbery attempt. Okay. And instead of going to therapy to deal with this, he decides he's going to dress up like a bat and beat people up with no formalized training, no special serum or special powers. Um, all he's got is money, which could buy him toys. And so, what is the differentiator? Why does Batman get to stand next to Wonder Woman and Superman inside of everybody's brain when they think about what the Justice League might be, or and the Flash and Green Lantern? Why does he get to walk in that pantheon of heroes? Superman could break him in a heartbeat. The Flash can outrun him. Wonder Woman can tie him up with the lasso of truth. Green Lantern can, get him with his ring and throw him off the top of a cliff. Why does Batman get to stand in there? And I will be fully and completely transparent here. I'm a Batman guy. My nickname in college was Batman. I'm that guy. I know that guy's brain, right? But why does that guy get to stand there? And the reason he gets to stand there is not because of his money. It's not because he's a rich guy. It's not because of the toys. It's because he understands something about human nature that none of those other guys, none of those other characters get. Because he's down on the street. He's with the people. He's a part of the dark underbelly, right, of human society. He's willing to stare into the abyss and not let it stare back through him. Or maybe he's fine with it staring back through him. You'll never really know because he's not going to be your friend. He's not there to be your friend. Like one of the greatest lines at the end of Batman Begins, when Gary Oldman, who's playing Commissioner Gordon, he says to him, "You know what? Hey, we never said thank you." And Christian Bale in that stupid gravelly voice that got worse over the next two movies. He says, "And you know what? You'll never have to." And then he just leaps off the building into the night. And I love that. And for me, Batman, and this is my whole thesis of today, Batman represents the entire Generation X cohort. That's our guy. That's our guy. Never getting a thank you,
Actually, you
not
know
getting
what?
any respect.
No, you know what? I believe you. I believe you. That's our guy because, like a lot of other Gen Xers, I'm sorry, I disagree with you a little bit here
That's
because
okay. Good.
he does not. He's not on the ground floor with anybody. He's a wealthy guy. When he's not Batman, he's sitting up at some penthouse somewhere with whatever any toy he wants, any drink he wants, no, he doesn't understand what I'm going through when I'm walking through the city
But he's
with my wife
bored by all of that.
I'll stop. Like, listen, the problem is he, so he tries. I agree with you that he's kind of Gen X is version of what our or whatever our psyche because he tries to fix problems he knows is there without having the experience to go fix the problems.
And without asking for help, by the way.
Without asking for help or permission.
Yes.
Yeah, that you just define Gen X right there. You just that's exactly. We see a problem, we're gonna go fix it. Nobody asked us to fix it. Doesn't matter. We're gonna go
It
fix it because
doesn't
it needs to
matter.
be fixed.
It needs to
And
be
we're gonna ask
fixed.
anybody's permission. And if nobody says thank you, we're just gonna move on and do something else anyway. Like so,
Yeah,
I
go.
understand what you're saying about this, but let's not come up with the delusion that Batman understands the common man because he's part of the common or the underbelly. No, he's not. He's not
Wait
part
a
of the
minute.
underbelly. He has
Hold
no
on, hold
idea what's
on.
going on down there.
Hold on, hold
He
on,
doesn't
hold on.
live in that world.
Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Let me defend my boy here a little bit here.
Oh, and the only reason he is in that world in the first place is because he injected himself in it. He
How
doesn't
else?
belong
Okay,
there.
how else is? And I'm talking about. I'm gonna limit my comments. I'm gonna limit my comments purely to the film version of Batman. I'm not going
Sure.
to talk about the comic book version because the comic book version is a totally different thing. There's all kinds of things happening in there. It's very confusing to follow the bouncing ball.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, in the comic book, just so that you know, in the last, I would say, 20 years, they've stripped Bruce Wayne of all of his money. And by the way, he's still been Batman
Yeah.
because at the core of it, it's not about the money. But anyway, let me go to just the film version. I think Batman Begins did a great job of showing Bruce Wayne rejecting that status, right? Which is the part of that drives us crazy is if you have all this money, why don't you just do what? And by the way, this movie came out during a time of Occupy Wall Street. So,
Yeah.
Occupy Wall Street was going around. People were talking about income inequality. This was like back in 2005. We were talking about income inequality. Barack Obama hadn't quite run for president yet, but everybody was tired of the Iraq and Afghanistan war. And then in 2008, The Dark Knight came out, and it's like, oh my gosh, that movie, I mean, that movie made $1 billion. It was insane, for a superhero movie. But the reason why Batman Begins works is because, to your point about cultural zeitgeist and Disney, Warner Brothers was able to tap into a certain level of cultural zeitgeist. And the cultural zeitgeist at the time was very much a Gen X cultural zeitgeist, which was these rich guys, we need to string them all up. That's why there's this great scene in The Dark Knight where the Scarecrow from Batman Begins, who was the villain in Batman Begins, is doing like French Revolution type trials.
Yeah.
Oh no, that was in the Dark Knight. Sorry, no, that was the Dark Knight. That was in the third one, the Dark Knight Rises. That was in the third one when Bane lets out all of
Oh,
the criminals or whatever, and he's like running the trials because the Scarecrow's crazy, of course, and he's running all the trials, and then he's pushing the rich guys and the bankers out on the ice to make them walk across the ice. If they can walk across the ice, they live. But if not, oh well, sorry, that's when we're dead banker. That's the revenge of average people on rich guys. So I will defend Batman. I will defend Bruce Wayne in saying that when he rejects his status in Batman Begins and runs off and gives away the coat to the homeless guy, and he's like, he just leaves, it goes to the night, abandons all that. He has to go all the way across the world to find somebody who's never met him and doesn't know that he has status. So he has to go to like, you know, someplace in China or something, right? To meet Ra's al Ghul, played by Liam Neeson, and do his training and all that kind of stuff. Um, so I mean, he's perfectly capable of rejecting all of that, and he does. Just because you would be up there in the penthouse. And by the way, there is something in the movie, by the way. There is something in the movie because his Liam Neeson actually says to him, "You just need to do like what your father did. Just build another hospital. It'll be fine. Just go ahead, give away your money. It'll be fine. That's all you need to do." And the subtle dig there is, of course, oh, just go be a socialist. Just go ahead, give away your money, and you'll suddenly fix everything. How dare you remain a don't remain a capitalist. Just give away all your money. That's the way to show your purity.
anyway. So
I didn't sell that, folks. He's not buying
no,
that. No, it's fine.
no,
It's fine.
I'm not
It's
buying
fine.
that at all.
You don't have to buy it. I ain't selling it.
But and to your point about like with no formal training. Like with all this money, you couldn't go get some martial arts lessons. Like what the hell?
He
Like,
did. He went all the way across the world though to do that.
yeah.
All right.
Anyway,
I've laid
anyway.
all my cards on the table. I'm a Batman guy. I am.
Oh, listen, if I had to pick one, so just for the record here, for the record, I host another podcast, as you know.
Sure. Yep.
It's in the sales and marketing world. But during the interviews of these sales and marketing consultants that I have, I
Hmm.
always ask every one of them, if you could be a superhero, which one would you be and tell me why? That's
Hmm.
part of my interview process. And by the way, I also ask that question of interviewers, like when I'm interviewing for actual business roles.
Hmm.
Because to be honest with you, it's a question that nobody ever asks. It's kind of off the cut, like it surprises people.
Hmm.
It doesn't give them a lot of time to think, and they have to react to it, which to me is a really good tool to have if you're a salesperson, right? Like
Hmm.
somebody asks you a question you have no idea how to answer. How quickly do you think on your feet? And like,
Yeah.
is the answer actually a thoughtful answer, even though you only had 30 seconds to think of it? Like, so there's
Hmm.
certain characteristics in there I'm looking for. But anyway, but on the podcast, I ask all these sales and marketing consultants, and they come up with everything under the sun: Superman,
Oh yeah.
Batman, whatever, Wolverine. I've actually had people say, "Can I create my own because I wish I had a superpower like this?" Whatever, fine.
Okay.
But the Batman one, when people ask me, and
Hmm.
they say, "Well, what would you do?" And I go, "Well, I would pick Batman for the reasons that you've pointed out, which is they consider him a superhero yet has no superpowers.
Hmm.
He uses every advantage he has to solve problems, whether
Hmm.
it's himself, his brain, technology, the counterintuitiveness it takes to think like your opponent, the whole
Hmm.
senzu kind of thing, like
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
so he leverages all the right things also for all the right reasons. So as
Hmm.
much as I give you crap about the Batman thing, like and I still find it be partly because we're talking about the actual movies, and I
Yeah.
find flaws in the movies, not necessarily in the character that the movie is supposed to be portraying to a certain level, which they almost
Hmm.
never do, in my opinion. I always just think they fall short. And
Yeah.
what Batman is to me, and what we and to be quite honest with you, growing up and watching the reruns of Adam West's version of it,
Hmm.
I I got to be honest, I don't think any of them have come to the way that TV series was written and the
Hmm.
way that like it was like that's what the movies have fallen short of that for me.
Interesting. Okay.
So
Hmm.
like if you think about how Adam West was portrayed, what his version of Batman stood for,
Yeah.
the justice, the and again the and the Adam West version, because it was a TV series, he had a different villain every week. Like he was
Right.
fighting
Yeah. Yeah.
somebody
Yeah.
different every week, but he never wavered on what was important throughout any of those battles. And in all the movies since, a lot of those messages are hidden, and they're like
Yeah.
they're not up front, they're not forward facing. And you said something earlier about Superman, which to me, Superman did a better job with what the superhero stood for.
Hmm.
Ultimately, throughout the course of the movies, whether the movie was good
Hmm.
or bad, you still understood what Superman stood for all the
Hmm.
time. Now, you could say that there was some crappy versions of Superman. Sure.
Yeah.
I'm not going to argue that. There's been some pretty crappy Superman movies. This last one was not good. I'm sorry. I know it earned a lot of money. I did not like it. I did not think it was very good. The story was heinous. And the only thing good about that movie was the kid who played Lex Luthor was amazing. Like his
Hmm.
acting was good. He was right for that role, but that's about it. Like that is the only thing. I mean, come on.
So,
The Iwo Jima thing with the kid and the flag. Come on. The movie was bad. But anyway, go ahead.
so I'm not going to defend the most recent Superman movie. Instead, what I'm going to say is this. There's a reason that, remember Man of Steel with Henry Cavill?
Yes.
Cavill? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Man of Steel failed to work.
Right.
And it's amazing to me. It's absolutely stunning to me that Man of Steel didn't work, but I think I know why. So, Let's go through let me read through sort of the analysis here. That way we can, because I want to talk about Superman now, because these are our two poles, right? Batman and Superman.
Yeah.
So the first Superman film, and again, I'm reading from my Substack article called Sunsetting the Dark Knight. You should go check that out on A Voice Crying in the Wilderness, or you just type my name, Jesan Sorrells, in Substack, and you'll find it. The first Superman film, and I quote from myself, the first Superman film since Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, Superman Returns, was released in 2006. By the way, that starred Brandon Routh, who was not a terrible Superman. He was not a terrible representation of the character. And while it went on to gross $392 million worldwide, it was considered to be a dud against a $270 million budget. Warner Brothers went back to the well again on Superman in 2013 with Man of Steel. That one starred Henry Cavill. In an attempt to jumpstart a shared universe without committing to doing the hard work of audience capture, Man of Steel did much better. Probably because Henry Cavill looks more superheroic. He looks more like a Superman character than Brandon Routh, grossing $670 million worldwide against a $225 million budget. Unlike Superman Returns, Man of Steel was unapologetically an appeal to the older Gen X audiences who wanted a grounded, quote unquote, realistic Superman of their own. Now, Man of Steel didn't work because I think we live in a late stage decadent America. And I think the reason why Man of Steel didn't work for Gen X is because no matter how dark you make Superman, he's still, quite frankly, a heroic archetype. And Gen X, and I'm saying this as part of this generation, Tom's part of this generation, we are not part of the heroic archetype. We're part of the nomad archetype, which is much more of a Batman sort of archetype. And I'm getting these archetypical kind of ideas from Strauss and Howe's generational theory around the fourth turning. And I sort of explain all of this in the Substack article. I don't want to go into a whole lot of depth with this, but just know there are certain archetypes that exist and survive and thrive during certain historical cycles. And we have lived in the last 25 years. Some would say we're not even out of it yet. I think we're coming out of it, but we've lived for the last 25 years in a state of historical chaos, cultural chaos, moral chaos, political chaos, and the nomad archetype survives really, really well in chaotic times after an unraveling. But typically, after a nomad archetype, you get a heroic archetype. Most millennials were born between 1984 or so and 1997. Anyone born between 84 and 97 is now either in their mid 40s or in getting into their mid 30s, right? And so that archetype, that heroic archetype, they are crying out cinematically for a hero, which is why, to double back to the MCU for just a second, Marvel movies work so well because it hit them during a time when they were looking for that archetype. But I think at the end of the day, they need a Superman, and that's why Henry Cavill didn't work. So let's talk about Superman for just a minute. Superman is, yeah, well, truth, justice in the American way, right? He's a child of the light. He's not a child of the dark. He's even powered by the sun. He's literally a child of the light, right? Yes, sent to Earth from a dying planet to save all of us from ourselves. Yes, okay, that's the Jesus Christ sort of framework there. By parents that he's never met. And now he's got this adopted, Ma and Pa Kent, who, by the way, taught him different lessons about the world than Thomas and Martha Wayne taught Bruce Wayne bleeding out in the street, right? And this is something, by the way, that's important to note. Just to bring in the comic books for just a second, there's a great scene in The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller from back in the day. We actually covered The Dark Knight Returns when we did our comic book episodes. Oh gosh, it's like episode number 6 or something. We also covered Watchmen on this show. And there's a great bit in there where Superman remembers, Clark Kent actually remembers how Bruce Wayne showed up to a Senate subcommittee when the U.S. government in the comic book is trying to get all the superheroes to register for a superhero registry. And Bruce Wayne shows up and basically he laughs at all the parents and he laughs at the senators. And because they ask him, like, what's the difference between you and a criminal? And basically, Bruce Wayne says, and Clark remembers it this way. He says, oh, you laughed that scary laugh when all the parents groups and the senators, and you could have just gone along, but you didn't, because this is Bruce Wayne too. This is classic Gen X. He said the truth to the subcommittee. Bruce Wayne goes, we're always criminals. We've always been criminals. We're always going to be criminals. All of us we're all vigilantes. Like, what's your problem? And then, much like Tony Stark in like, was it Iron Man 2, where he like like goes off from the Senate subcommittee and then just leaves. Like, I've privatized world peace. You all should be thanking me. And then just leaves.
Yeah.
Bruce Wayne did basically the exact same thing. It's like, we're always criminals. We've always been criminals. The hell's your problem? And then he just leaves. Clark Kent will never do that. That will never come out of Clark Kent's mouth. And this is part of the reason I think Man of Steel didn't work. No matter how dark you make Clark Superman's costume, the guy in there is a child of Iowa. He's a child of the light. He's a hero. Thoughts on Superman?
Yeah, so I was never a big Superman fan, honestly. Like I mean I've seen the movies, don't get me
Yeah,
wrong.
yeah, yeah.
Again, because I mean my wife makes fun of me constantly because has stopped asking me, "Hey, have you seen this? Whatever, enter movie,
Movie.
TV show, whatever." Like and she's like "Have you seen this episode of what?" I'm like, "Yes, whatever." Anyway, so I still will watch them
Hmm.
partly because I just want to pick on them. Like I just want to rip them
Yeah,
apart, right? But
yeah.
to your point about Superman, I think, and again, I think if you want to put it in some real layman's terms, right? Superman is the home cooked meal, warm apple pie, dessert after dinner kind of environment, and Batman is down and dirty. I'll eat on the run.
Hmm.
Like I can be alone by myself doing my own thing and like the loner archetype. Like I don't need anybody's help, right? And Superman wants, even though he doesn't need it because he's Superman, he wants everybody's buy-in. Like he wants the
Hmm.
world. He wants the kumbaya, right?
Hmm.
So to your point, you can't really make that dark. And when you do, it seems comical almost. Half the
Right.
movie I was laughing. I was like, what am I watching here? What are we doing? What are we doing, folks? Like, what are we doing? Like Superman
Well,
talking about warm apple pie in the American way, right? Like it's like
well, and this is a thing that I saw in the most recent Superman film, which grossed significantly less. I think it grossed like the Brandon Ruth Superman Returns numbers. I think it did somewhere around 600 million worldwide.
yeah.
So somewhere close to that. But it's been greenlit for a sequel. So James Gunn is going to do another one after the Supergirl flop, which is, don't get me started on that. But he's going to do another one.
I haven't
And
I haven't seen that one yet, by the way, and I'm not sure I'm going to. I pro
don't bother.
I pro honestly, it's like a train wreck you have to watch,
Don't
right?
bother.
Like
No, you
so
don't.
I
No, you don't.
probably will once it comes out on streaming that I don't have to pay for it, like because I'll probably watch it when I don't have to pay for it, and then I'll make fun of it. But like, my kids went to see it, and my daughter came back. She goes, "I just watched a superhero movie about a dog," and then I was like, "Wait, what?" She's like, "Yeah,
It's
like
spectacular.
half the movie was about the dog," and I was like, "Oh, maybe I do want to see this
Yeah,
movie
maybe I do
then."
want to see this movie.
So,
No, so I there's several problems with Supergirl. The biggest problem is Supergirl has always been a second tier, God help you, third tier character
for sure.
because you don't need her. There was even a Supergirl movie that was released in the 1980s that everybody forgets about. I think 86, maybe 85, 86, somewhere in the mid 80s. And it didn't even do big numbers because she's always been a second tier character. Unfortunately, we live in cultural times where, and Tom may disagree with me on this, but we live in cultural times where equal representation has to be had by everybody. So, like, you can't have now, let me be very clear. Superman is an immigrant. So he's from an alien from another planet, which I would think all the millennials would get on board with that. And don't worry, he could take on ice agents. It's fine. Like, It's fine. It's not a problem. He's got laser vision. What's the issue? So you don't really need a black Superman. You don't need a female Superman. You don't need a Latino Superman. And you don't need, now I'm going to step on the toe here, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. You don't need an LGBTQ Superman either. He's already an alien. The waterfront's covered.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got pink skin and he fits in with the Caucasian people. So what? He's still from another planet. Okay. So, like, you don't need all those multiple representations of Superman. And with that being said, you need him to represent an archetype that fundamentally, I think, has to have a cultural resonance, which is why they're getting a sequel, because the cultural resonance of the millennial audience, and this is my core point today, the cultural relevance of the millennial audience. I have two more film examples to bring to this: Project Hail Mary and Masters of the Universe, which I think also tie up my idea here. You have to have cultural relevance, not cultural, sorry, heroic archetypes for the millennial audience. And I think they have to ascend past the superhero. But I think it all starts with Superman. By the way, this is the reason why the 2022 Batman movie with Robert Pattinson didn't work, and why they've been struggling to get a sequel out for that, and that won't work either, because the millennial audience, the Gen Xers have aged out of Batman. I don't need to see another Batman movie as I approach 50.
Yeah, right.
I'm kind of good with that. I'm set. Um, and the generations behind me, the two generations behind, actually three generations behind me, the millennials, Gen Z, and then the prophet types who are going to be Gen Alpha, who are like my 9-year-old son, right? Those three, Batman ain't going to work for them. But Superman will work for at least a couple of generations. And so, as much as you didn't enjoy that Superman movie, and by the way, I saw it on a plane, just to be, just to tell you, I watched it on a plane. Um, this is my Superman review, Superman by James Gunn
So
review.
bad. So bad.
I think it holds. So the internal logic of the film holds up, which is really hard, by the way, these days to get internal logic to hold up in a film, because there's people doing all kinds of characters violating all kinds of internal logic. And you're like, why are you doing that? And it's because it's for, let me put this in air quotes, the message, whatever that may be, that we have to get across to modern audiences. Okay, fine. But Superman didn't do any of that. James Gunn actually tried to do a pure, straightforward, millennial, archetypical hero who floats above everything, tries to get people to work together, is still an immigrant, will come in and lecture the bad guy, but at the end of the day, doesn't want to be too tethered or too tied down. It works. It works at that level. And just like Project Hail Mary, and just like Masters of the Universe, it doesn't need to work for me. And that's where I'm okay with it. It doesn't need to work for me. This movie is not for me, and it's okay. And I watched it with my 9-year-old son, and his review of Superman was, well, that was interesting, Dad. Can we watch something else? Which was amazing. We're on a plane, like flying back home or whatever from someplace. I can't remember where. Might have been Florida or something. It was like a 4-hour flight. And we watched it for half of it. And he goes, well, okay, I don't know. I just started laughing. And yes, I was annoyed by the dog, by the way. The dog Crypto, it's not a
So bad.
terrier mutt. It's supposed to be a golden retriever, James Gunn. But I understand you have a terrier mutt, so you had to put your dog in the movie. Come on.
Yeah, it was so stupid.
But it's not for us.
And not only
It's not
that,
for us.
about half, no, maybe, all right, maybe half of what the dog did, you could have used a real dog. Why are you using the CGI garbage?
Because it's not for us, Tom. It's for a different audience. We have to put our brain. This is genuine empathy, Tom. We have to have genuine empathy. We have to put our heads. We have to say that what we want and what we desire doesn't matter. Put that aside and understand that there are other people who have other desires, and those desires might matter, and that's genuine empathy.
Sure. So we're going to make bad movies for people who don't understand how movies are supposed to work.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
all right,
Yeah.
I understand now. I get it. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And the whole thing will just continue to roll on and it'll be fine.
And the next alpha generation will come by and say, "What is this garbage? Let's make better movies."
There you go. That's right. That's exactly. I'm playing a long game here. Speaking of playing the long game, so you and I talked about Project Hail Mary.
Yes.
Um, I want folks to go back, not go back. I want folks to know that we're going to switch, and I'm going to sort of rerun what I said about Project Hail Mary at this spot right here. So if you hold on, we're going to rerun it at this spot right here. Do you like the film? What did you like about the film?
So let me just jump right. I'll dive headfirst in first of all. So my wife basically cried through half the movie. Like she thought this movie was the coolest movie, loved it, loved it, loved it. For me, there were, and I think you and I agree on most of this, by the way. There was a small component that I didn't really think about until after you and I had this conversation, but I like the fact that it felt new and fresh,
Hmm.
right? Even though it wasn't. Again, you and I talked about this because you thought it was a little bit more new and fresh than I did because I saw components
Yeah,
of like the Lost in Space scenarios and stuff like that. But again,
yeah,
but regardless of that, I think that's the distance between the base material is far enough because these generations have no idea what Lost in Space even is, or Buck Rogers, or they
yeah.
have no idea. So for you and I thought it was a little close to home with some of that stuff, but I still thought they presented it in a way that was fresh and good. I thought Ryan Gosling was way better in this than I remember him being in most other things. Like I've
Hmm.
never really been a big fan of his, and I thought he did a really nice job in this. I thought the other thing I thought was interesting in this, the way they introduced the new character, and I don't want to give
Hmm.
too much away about the movie, but
Right.
the character in the movie that's like the star of the movie, so to speak, the way they introduced it was just different. It was a little refreshing that it wasn't like you know it came to me after you and I talked about this. It's almost reminiscent of The Arrival. Do you remember the movie The
Oh, yeah,
Arrival?
yeah, 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 yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
So again, as fresh and new as this looked, the more I thought about it, the more I thought there was more source material that it had impacted. I think overall, though, I think the best part of it for me was being able to see Ryan Gosling in a way that I hadn't seen him before. I actually thought
Okay.
he was pretty good in this, and I don't think of him as a really great actor or one like amazing or anything. Like I just thought he was pretty darn good in this movie.
So I will give you not credit, but I'll go along with that. Yeah. So let me let me praise before I critique. Ryan Gosling. We finally found a vehicle for Ryan Gosling that actually allowed him to be a stand-up, not a stand-up, but a stand-out actor. This is the first movie I've seen him in where I didn't either confuse him with a block of wood or cardboard, as in Blade Runner 2049, or confuse him with Ryan Reynolds, like the movie that he was in a few years ago with Emily Blunt, where he played a stunt driver. I can't remember the name of that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought he was, I overlap him in my brain with Ryan Reynolds, and it's terrible. It's also not an art film like Driver, which I really loved. I loved that, or not Driver, Drive. Drive. I really love Drive. I could watch Drive all the time. I like the soundtrack to that movie. But that was probably almost 10 years ago for Ryan Gosling. He hasn't really had a significant, in my opinion, a significant role since then. And yes, I know he did the tap dancing movie that he won a bunch of Oscars for. I don't count that one. Okay, because I don't have to, and that's the way I am, or whatever, ballroom dancing, whatever the hell he
Yeah,
was
this is
doing.
our show. We can deep six it if we want. It's fine.
Yeah, I'm deep sixing. I don't care about those Oscars. Film historians, 300 years from now will look at whatever happened in the last 25 years of the Oscars, and they'll be like, it was just cinematic crime everywhere. Okay, Ryan Gosling was good. Sandra Hüller was good. The woman who played the the head engineer, chief scientist, who basically went and pulls him out of the middle
Out of the
slash high
classroom.
school that he's like
Yeah.
teaching in. Sort of like, and actually that entire opening sequence where he's like teaching or whatever, reminded me of Walter White in Breaking Bad, just with a better attitude.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
oh, he's like Walter White. He's he's hitting below his potential.
Yes. Yeah.
And and I thought they were going to go the direction of him being resentful like Walter White. No, 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 no. That's not the direction that they went into. He was happy hitting below his potential. And actually, in thinking about it right now, that's sort of the first click that I should have had in my head that there was going to be a problem. I was going to have a problem with it later on. But Ryan Reynolds is great. Or sorry, I said there. Ryan Gosling is great. It's not completely cemented in there yet. Ryan Gosling is great. Sandra Hüller is great. She's so good. I went and watched Anatomy of the Fall, and I watched the movie that she did about being the wife of the commandant of Auschwitz. Theory of Interest, I think, is the name of that movie, or Zone of Interest, not Theory of Interest, Zone of Interest. I went back and watched that movie too. Both of those are interesting films. Go check both of them out. Okay. The actors and actresses are great. The set design is brilliant. It was a throwback to 2001: A Space Odyssey for me.
Yeah.
And that makes sense because Andy Weir, the writer of the book, is a hard science Arthur C. Clarke kind of guy. So I got all the Arthur C. Clarke references. I got all the hard science references, and the science of it makes sense. That's just one of the pluses of this. The physics of the thing makes sense. So even if the characterizations may not necessarily fully be there outside of the two main characters, which, and you do have some supporting characters, but they're mostly, except for the one guy who helps him right at the beginning. The security guard helps him right at the beginning.
Yeah,
most of everybody else is
service
just
guy.
Yeah, most everybody else is just wallpaper. At a certain point, I was like, why don't they just send the Secret Service guy to like Tau Ceti? Yeah. Just send that guy. Like, you don't want. Anyway, I won't give it all away, but yeah. Gosling has a problem. Like at the beginning of the third act, he has a little bit of a challenge with something that he's asked to do. Okay. So set design was good, music was good. I didn't have a problem with the visuals. The story, and I've said this repeatedly, holds up under its own internal logic. So I didn't have a problem with any of that. The internal logic makes sense and doesn't fall apart until, and I have to be very careful how I say this because this is a new movie, so you got to go watch it. The internal logic holds up until the last 5 minutes of the movie.
Oh, I was gonna say 5 to 7 minutes. Yeah.
And that last 5 to 7 minutes of it ruined it for me. And I'm going to tell you why. And Tom knows what I'm talking about. I know what I'm talking about. This is like the old Siskel and Ebert show. We're not going to give you away the ending, but we're going to talk about what ruined it for us. Okay, so I'm going to talk about that. I have 2 minutes. I realized that if the actor had been different, if it hadn't been Ryan Gosling, if it had been Matt Damon, the ending would have been different. And the reason why the actor matters, and normally I don't think actors matter, I think the writing is what matters and the direction is what matters. And by the way, Phil Lord, Chris Miller, the Lego Movie guys, they did a great job with the writing. Again, it follows through, right? The ending irritated me and made me sort of not like this movie because the ending is very much a generational nod to a generation that is behind me. And so it is almost as if they are saying to me and anyone who's older, this isn't for you. And I think that that's the beginning of a cultural trend where the film cultures, it already has begun to move away from myself and other older Gen Xers, but it was definitely not a Gen X ending.
No, actually, the Gen X ending would have been, and again, without giving away the movie, the decision that he made in that the 5 to 7 minutes before the ending that you're talking about, when you see it in his eyes that he makes the decision that he makes, end of movie. Like that would have been the ideal spot to end the movie. The last 5 or 6 minutes was unnecessary.
Right.
It was, to your point, it was to placate. That 5 to 7 minutes was to placate so that both generations watching the movie were good with the movie.
Right. But I realize after having thought about it now for the last 2 weeks, because the 2 weeks since I saw this movie, it's been bugging me. And I do have a Substack article coming out on this, and so we'll link to the Substack article later on. You'll be able to go read my thoughts, 2,500 word banger essay on Substack about this, because I got to write it to get it out of me because I'm old school that way. But I realize that it's okay that it's not for me. Like it's one of those moments that I'm having where like this cultural thing has passed is passing me by. And weirdly, I don't feel like I have to catch the train. And I get it.
No.
It's going to make a lot of money and it's made a lot of money and it got my money and God bless it, but I don't have to catch the cultural train.
But I think for you and I especially, I think if we view this movie again, up until that decision point that he makes, that when he
Mm-hmm.
makes that decision, if we think of that as the end of the movie, this is an awesome movie.
Yes.
This
Yes.
is
I can get on board with the movie. Yeah,
this is
absolutely.
really an awesome movie. As a
Absolutely.
matter of
I can
fact,
get.
when I watch it, because I'm going to watch it again when I get watch it when I'm at home, right? So when
Mhm.
it comes out on streaming or whatever, I'll just shut it off at that point. I'll be like, oh, the decision. There's the decision point off. This is a great
Well, and
movie.
I well, and I wonder because I'm going to watch it probably with my 9 year old and my 15 year old who will be 10 and 16 by the time it comes out.
Yeah,
Um, I will watch it with them. My 16-year old will probably be okay with the end. It'll nudge her a little bit,
yeah,
but my 10-year-old will be absolutely okay with it.
right.
And that's where the influence is
Even
going.
worse is your 10-year-old will expect it.
Correct. And that's where the influence is going. And
Yeah.
I'm beginning to realize that like that cultural train, it's okay if I don't get on it. And it's fine for it to go right by me. So I've got to head out. You've got to head out. We've got different things going on. Thumbs up, thumbs down, as Siskel and Ebert used to do back in the day.
Overall, thumbs up for me, definitely. I thought it
All
was.
right.
Oh, but
I'm
we
gonna
if we're gonna do special podcast episodes like this more frequently, we got to come up with something different than thumbs up. Down. We'll figure that out later. But
we'll figure
yes,
that out later. But we're gonna
for
go
now, thumbs up.
you're gonna go thumbs up. Okay. I'm gonna be like Gene Siskel. I'm gonna go thumbs down on this because it's not for me, and that's okay.
Yeah,
And with that, folks, well, now we're out.
we're out.
All right, and we're back. So you just heard our Project Hail Mary review that we did oh gosh, probably about a month and a half ago, maybe when the film first came out. Um I watched it again this weekend, this time with my kids, because now it's on Amazon, because MGM owns Amazon or whatever, or Amazon owns MGM now. And they produced the movie, and so it's been released to streaming. So I watched it this weekend with my 16-year-old daughter and my 9-year-old son, the aforementioned 9-year-old son, who we also saw Masters of the Universe. And watching it again, I was watching it not for my reactions or responses or my wife and I's reactions or responses to it because I already kind of knew what I needed to know about the movie. And actually, the ending is it was a lot more palatable for me because I actually saw how it all like tied together and actually made a lot more sense. So I was like, oh, okay, it doesn't violate its own internal logic as much as I thought it did. But still, it's fundamentally not for me. But my 16-year-old thought the film was brilliant.
Interesting.
And my 9-year-old was like, huh, so
So
they
can
just went to another planet. He just went to another planet with the rock people?
So funny thing. So my youngest, my 24-year-old looked at me and said, "Oh, it's basically our generation's version of ET." And I went, "Oh my God, you're right." Like, I mean, the reversal was like, I mean, ET was here on Earth, I get it, and he
Yeah,
just wanted to go home. In Project Hail Mary, they're out in space, and both of them just want to go home.
just want to go home. Yeah.
It was one of those things that like it hit me. I was like, "Oh my God, why
Hey,
why can't we just come up with a new idea?" It is ET. Like, and I gave that
well,
movie some credit, by the way, for being a fresh new idea. And my kid just squashed that for me.
well, okay, so I could see the ET parallels. I could absolutely see that ET in reverse. Um, I think the emotional beats are fundamentally different. And the Sandra Hüller character, the chief scientist or whatever, who like shanghais him off, gets his ass on the on the rocket.
So,
um, there's no parallel for that in ET.
um,
Even the male scientist that comes to the house, the scientist that comes to the house and like tries to convince them to like give up ET and all this other kind of stuff. Maybe you can maybe, but it's not.
Well, so
And there's a I think there's a clear reason why that's not a one-to-one parallel. But go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say that. I was gonna say like I think the idea too, the concept or the difference here is like E.T. was essentially made for kids, right?
You're
Like
right. Yeah.
that was written for kids. They wanted kids to love the movie, so they had no choice but to not have her character in the movie, right?
Right.
Whereas Project Hail Mary, to our point before, there's bits and pieces. It's like Disney movies. Like when you go to watch a Disney movie with your kid, there's humor in it that you get that your kid doesn't get, right? Like Disney does that on
Yeah.
purpose. And I think Project Hail Mary, that's the same kind of environment where there's pieces of Project Hail Mary that are like for everybody. Like
hmm
they did a really nice job making like not every bit of the movie was for us. Not
Right.
every bit of the movie was for your son. Not every bit of the movie was for my daughter, but we can all sit there and watch it and still enjoy the movie at different pieces and components for the same for different reasons. We all enjoy that movie for different reasons, which ET wasn't trying to do. So to your
Right.
point, I do agree. I think her statement still holds true in a sense that like think about it this way. What other movie depicts aliens in a positive light like that, in a warm and fuzzy light, in an actual character light where it's somebody that you want to associate yourself with. Like think about all the other alien movies that are available to us, whether it's Aliens, Predator, um, some of the even Guardians of the Galaxy to a certain degree. Like there's only some of those aliens you want to be around, not all of them. Some of them are bad. Like it's like there's no other movie. The movie did a nice job trying to make it like relatable, even though it was alien, so to speak.
So I think this is part of, I think what you're sensing is part of a sea shift that's beginning to occur. And this is why this is part of our thing today, right? I think there's a cultural shift occurring where we are moving away from, and this is why Disclosure Day didn't work. Like Disclosure Day should have worked.
I didn't see that yet. I do want to see that.
Okay. So and by the way, I haven't seen it either. But when I say work, I don't mean work in terms of the film or in terms of the subject matter. I mean work in terms of box office numbers.
Sure, sure.
The box office numbers are reflective of the cultural shift that has occurred. But Hollywood is like 2 to 3 years behind the curve on this one.
Mhm.
So there's a movie out right now called either Obsession, no, Backrooms. Backrooms, which is
I
based
did
off of
I saw Obsession. I didn't see Backrooms yet either.
okay, or it might be Obsessions. I don't know. Anyway, um, I think it is Obsessions, based off of some YouTube short about backrooms or whatever.
Oh,
It
very
doesn't
good.
matter. Yeah. It doesn't matter. I don't know. So the first time I saw the trailer for whatever this thing is, it's like blowing it away. Um, I was like, this is like Blair Witch Project. Why do I need to watch this again? And I moved on. And that was my first initial like blush on it, right? But it represents, again, that shift where we're going to go the business of Hollywood. We're going to go grab an original idea from YouTube, which they should have been doing 15 years ago
For sure.
in Hollywood. And we're going to give these YouTubers who don't have a SAG card and don't know what unionization is, we're going to give them $100 million and tell them to go make a movie. And actually, not 100 million. We're going to give them 15 million.
They did that movie for 1 million.
They did a movie for 1 million. Oh, even better.
Well, if we're talking about Obsession,
Yeah,
that movie was made for about $1 million.
a
One
million bucks.
million bucks.
We're going to give a YouTuber $1 million. We're going to make back how much money has that movie made?
It's in the hundreds of millions at this point.
Insane. Insane. We work with startups in our regular lives. That's an insane ROI.
That's a unicorn, as we say in the startup world.
That is a
That's,
unicorn. That's right. That is a unicorn.
that's
But
a
it's a
unicorn.
unicorn from YouTube. Well, who is the predominant audience for YouTube? Who grew up with cutting their eye teeth visually on YouTube? It was the millennials. It wasn't us.
Yeah.
You know, our generation created the platform that is YouTube, but we didn't cut our eye teeth on the content and taking that thing to the next level. That's the millennials and the Gen Zers. And so the cultural shift that's occurring in film is away from our generation. And by the way, away from the boomers too. Like a movie like, honestly, a movie like Disclosure should have never been made. Spielberg should be making small, intimate, arts types films with like Dame Judi Dench and like some other old male actor, Sam Neill. I mean, he passed away this weekend, but Sam Neill, like Sam Neill and Dame Judi Dench showing up, talking in hushed tones about, some existential ordinary people crisis. Like those are the kinds of movies but he can't get that movie made. He can't get that movie made because the economics of movies have been so warped by Marvel and everything else. He can't get that movie made. But that's the kind of movie he should be making for the boomer crowd. That's
Right.
what they want. Us, as Gen Xers, we're going to get skipped over. It's fine. It's the usual. It's fine. Don't bother talking to us.
That's because we have a higher tolerance level for all of this garbage.
That's true.
That's why.
That's
Because they
true.
know they can just pump out whatever they want and we'll be like, oh, whatever. We'll just go see it. Who cares?
Whatever. I'll go watch Neuromancer on Apple TV. It'll be fine. But the
Again,
millennial
though, but
audiences
like,
are different. And now the Hollywood culture is moving more and more towards them. And I think Project Hail Mary is, along with Obsessions or Backrooms or whatever the hell it's called, is a canary in the coal mine kind of film. This is going to tell you where things are going. And by the way, Ryan Gosling in that movie, and I see this now more in the second viewing of it than I even did in the first viewing, because I kind of got in the first viewing, but now it's really solidified with the second viewing. Ryan Gosling is your new archetype for a hero with no superpowers.
hmm, maybe, yeah, maybe.
He's the ultimate archetype. Like you're going to see a ton of like archetypical Ryan Gosling type character acting going on in millennial heroic movies moving forward over the next 5 to 10 years
Well, right,
because it
because
just worked.
their version of a hero is smaller scale, right? It's minor. It's you did this one thing that had this huge impact. Like I'm not saying their impact isn't big. I'm saying the millennials have this like I'm gonna control what's in front of me. I'm not gonna look. I'm gonna have blinders on. I'm gonna solve this. I'm gonna solve this one problem in front of me in hopes that this one problem has a ripple effect and has a big impact.
And don't
That
ask me to do any deep blue hero stuff. I'm not a
exactly.
boomer. Don't ask me to
Right.
do any deep blue hero
I'm
stuff
not jumping on the
because
grenade. Like, right? Like, I'm not going to jump on the grenade. I'll try to find a piece of metal to stick over the grenade so that we save everybody, including myself.
yeah, because I can't. There's the great scene in there, the great scene in there where he's like sitting there and they like Sandra Hüller is like going to give Ryan Gosling the choice to get on the thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And she already knew. By the way, when I saw this again, I thought, oh my God, she's a Gen Xer. Oh my God, that's a Gen Xer move right there. We're
So,
just
by the
going
way, since it's come out on streaming, I've watched this three additional times, so four times
to,
total. I've watched this movie now four times.
okay, so you know exactly what I'm talking about there. Like
Exactly.
this is
She did such a good job in that movie. You could see it in her eye, and she was
yes,
just acting. It wasn't real, but I swear to God, I think she thought it was real. It
she
was like
did.
you could see it.
She was
There's
in
like this
it.
switch, this like switch that happens on her face. You know how like like in the real world, we have these micro expressions that you have
Mhm.
no control over. I don't
Right.
know how she did it, but I'm telling you, she believed what she was doing was real at some point because
She
the
was
micro
going.
expressions on her face, you could see the click, and you're like, "Whoa,
I'm
she's going
telling
through
you,
this."
Sandra has some millennial in her life that she has had to Shanghai into doing something, and they didn't want to do it, and she just went, "Well, okay, this is going to hurt you more than it's going to hurt me."
Exactly. Exactly. I saw it as I watched that movie on the, I don't know, whatever, the third or fourth time, and I'm sitting there going,
hmm
dude, she believes, I swear to God, she believes this. Like, I don't think, like they talk about method actors sometimes where
Yeah.
they get so engulfed in their character that they become that character for that period of time. And then
hmm
like, and you'll hear this about really good performances, right? Like people,
hmm
I'm trying to remember, well, the Heath Ledger one that you talked, well,
The
specifically
Dark
about this
Knight.
episode that we're talking about right now in The Dark Knight. Supposedly he never got out of that, which is what was his demise.
Right.
Like he
Yep.
was never able to get himself out of character. So that was part of what happened with him and his death. And there have been several other people. Robin Williams has done it, and there are people. Dustin Hoffman in Rain Man.
Oh,
He
yeah.
talks about how long it took him to stop acting like that because they get so engulfed in this. I think she did that without knowing she did it. Like
Yeah.
I'm just to your point, she must have had some vision in her mind of some millennial that she had to deal with in her personal life, and it just took over. She was just like, now I got
Now,
you. I
I
got you.
see. Well, and you're not going to ask. This is the thing. Heroics, right? and this is why Superman works. So the new Superman works. The Superman to Ryan Gosling link is it click, it's there. And then the other movie that I've seen recently that's sort of because for me, one movie, okay, that's a one-off, whatever.
Sure.
Two movies, now there might be something, but three movies is a pattern. And so
Well,
my
that's basic fundamentals of the rules of math, right?
it is
So
correct.
one
Yes.
could be an anomaly, two is a coincidence, three is a pattern.
Three
So
is a pattern. So my third movie that I would like to submit to a orderly film world or disorderly one, like the one we've set up here so far, is Masters of the Universe. So I don't know if you've seen Masters of the
so
Universe.
you're gonna have to do some of the talk because I did not see this yet, and I
Okay.
really, 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 really wanted to. Like
Okay.
and again, so something that I think that you alluded to in our correspondence about this episode that
Hmm.
we grew up with
We
we
did.
grew up with He-Man, right? Like
Hmm.
we grew up with the Mattel version of He-Man, the
Hmm.
cartoon version of
Hmm.
He-Man, sorry, I'm sorry, and Dolph Lundgren, right? So
Hmm.
Dolph Lundgren
Yep.
played He-Man in the movie when we were kids. So I had to see this. I have to see this movie because I want to compare it to all of that.
Hmm.
And I know that you can, so I'm curious to what you're thinking about it. And I don't care if you ruin plot but I'm gonna watch it anyway, so don't worry
Okay.
about it.
Okay.
So
I'm not going to ruin plot. I'm not going to ruin plot. What I will say is this: all the beats are there. So Dolph Lundgren shows up in a great bit in the gym. It's spectacular. So Dolph Lundgren shows up. Um, Jared Leto absolutely kills it as Skeletor. Oh my God, he
really,
kills it. If there were an award for like villain of the year beyond like Razzie, if there were Oscars given out for villains other than to like Heath Ledger, they should give one to Jared Leto. Number one, you never see his face, you never see his facial expressions, but he totally, completely embodies Skeletor, and you don't need to see his face. Like you believe it. You're like, oh yeah, yep. Even down to the sarcasm, the wit, the the like, this is ridiculous and stupid. What are we doing here? Look at all of that. Leto embodies that character. He crushed it. The supporting characters around He-Man are interesting. So, um, they had to set up the backstory, right, for all the people that don't know the show. And so they spent a lot of time on setting up the backstory, and it was a good setup. Like the first 15 minutes is just good backstory setup. The guy who plays He-Man, let me bring up his name for just a second here because I always forget it. By the way, he's also in a movie which we watched in my house recently, called Sheep Detectives.
I love that movie. Come on,
It's
that movie's great.
it it's a movie that I didn't think that it was possible to be made. Let's just put it that way. Um, yeah, Nicholas Galitzine. That's right. Nicholas Galitzine plays He-Man, right? And Prince Adam, right? Separated from his sword. And he plays Prince Adam with such sincerity and believability. And he plays it genuinely honestly. Like he's genuinely trying to be He-Man. So there's no like, and so this is the link from Superman to Ryan Gosling and Project Hail Mary, Ryland Grace. So from Superman to Ryland Grace to Prince Adam, here's the link. Sincerity. That's the link. Not cynicism, not sarcasm, not I'm trying to look for something deeper. Matter of fact, there's this whole sequence with Skeletor where like one of the characters is trying to find something deeper in, or no, I know what it is. Yeah, Prince Adam's trying to find something deeper in Skeletor, and Skeletor's like, "I'm just evil. There's nothing deeper than that. Like
Pretty
I'm just
simple, right?
right. I'm just evil." But you have to understand, millennials came up in an environment set for them by Gen Xers where we, quite frankly, had to see the gray in the world, which is why Batman works for us because we really wanted black and white, where like the evil was really like there's evil and there's good and there's this. Unfortunately, If you are a child of divorce, if you grow up in a culture of unraveling, there's a lot of nuances and grays, and you have to figure out how to navigate that. You also wind up with a species of, and I've said this on the show before, you wind up in a species of um, cynicism and sort of a lack of, not even lack of, sincerity becomes a weapon to be used against you rather than a tool of heroism. And what you see from Ryland Grace through to Superman, through now to Prince Adam and Masters of the Universe is absolute total sincerity. Like that was one of the things in He-Man. Like you actually believe he's He-Man because he believes he's He-Man. And he's not faking. He's not pretending. He's not sarcastic. He's not cynical. He's not going to like see the gray in the villain at the end. There's none of that. And it's weirdly I hate to say this. This you're gonna take away my Gen X bona fides on this, but it's fine. It's weirdly refreshing. It's weirdly refreshing. And so Masters of the Universe is built for a Gen X audience with all the throwbacks and everything
Mm.
to things we remember. But it's built on that's the structure that it's built on top of. But what's inside that structure is millennial sincerity. And this is why it hasn't done well because it's trying to bifurcate an audience rather than going full in one direction or full in another. It's trying to bifurcate an audience and have it both ways. And you can't have it both ways.
Well, do you think that's in part because the characters can't do that? Like think about what you're saying, right? Like
Yeah.
the characters weren't written like that originally. They weren't designed for that. They were
Yeah.
designed for what they were. And like you're trying to now, so you're doing the opposite. You're trying to enforce a system or you're trying to project onto the characters what you want them to be instead of who they are. Like that's
Yeah.
so Gen Xers are
Sure.
probably watching this going, cut the crap.
Yeah.
Like you know, like just let He-Man be He-Man, right? Like
Yeah.
where's Battle Cat? That's all. Like I really, that's all.
Okay.
Like I want to see what they did with Battle Cat. I want to see how they did that. Like that's one of my
So
major things. Like
so Battle Cat is in there. I won't spoil the surprise, but what Battle Cat is in there?
what's the guy Sergeant the Sergeant guy? What's his name?
Oh yeah, he's in there too. Oh
Yeah,
yeah, the
like
whole
but
thing.
but they try to wussify him at all? Like because like
Okay.
if they try to make that's what I'm saying though. Like where you've got these very and by the way, even the women in He-Man in the He-Man
Hmm.
universe and Masters of the Universe, the women were like macho for
Oh
women.
yeah. Yeah.
And if they try to change that, then no wonder why it's failing. Like you can't do that.
Well, so part of the other millennial sort of stroking in there is there's a whole bit in there, and it's a running bit about HR and girl bosses,
Yeah.
but it's not a bit, it's a bit that's designed to so there's Gen X cynicism and sarcasm, and there's millennial cynicism and sarcasm. And it's definitely millennial cynicism and sarcasm. So there's still this sincerity of like, I want to do well at work. And there's a whole sequence where he's in prison. Prince Adam gets thrown into prison, and he's in prison with all of the other well, all the other the pop well, not all, but a lot of the population of Eternia. And he has to rally them to be heroic. And he's like, well, if there's one thing I learned in HR, it's how to have a meeting.
Okay. Yeah, I like
And
it.
I'm like, that's okay, yeah, that is what the millennials have learned. They've learned how to have a meeting. And it was one of
They're
those moments
not
where
sure they know what to do
I
from the meeting,
run
but
that meeting, right,
they
right.
can run the meeting.
They can run the meeting and they know what everybody's role should be in the meeting. And so it was one of those like pokes in the eye a little bit. And it works in the context again of the internal logic of the film all sticks together. It all loops together, it all holds. Even the more ridiculous elements of it hold. So I think you'll enjoy Masters of the Universe. I don't know that you'll give it an A. Now I will say this. You and I grew up with one version of Masters of the Universe. Kevin Smith created Mallrats and Clerks and that guy
Yeah.
created a version of Masters of the Universe for Netflix a couple years ago. That's the version my 9-year-old knows, and I think that's the version that most folks between 5 and 9, if they're watching it at all, or know. And he was so he gave Masters of the Universe a big thumbs down because it wasn't like what he's seen in the Kevin Smith version. And I had to tell him, listen, kid, what you're watching on Netflix isn't, that's not the real thing. That's something that like this guy named Kevin Smith made. And you don't need to know who Kevin Smith is. You don't need to know how, to use a millennial term, how problematic he actually is. You don't need to know any of that. You don't need to know any of that. My point is, that's not the real thing. You're watching a reboot. So you're basing your idea of what you think is original off of a reboot. But
Right.
yeah, he was out. He was like, well, this isn't this, and this isn't that, and they do this and da, 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 da. And I'm like, that doesn't that's not the thing you're watching. This is based off of the original thing, the OG thing. And he's like, well, all right, fine. Where can I get more popcorn?
So is the Kevin Smith version actually called Masters of the Universe?
Yeah, it's called He-Man and Masters of the Universe. Yeah.
Okay. Right. I don't know why.
Yeah, you can find it on Netflix.
Yeah, I'm gonna go look for it actually because I don't remember this. And,
Just be prepared.
I'm probably gonna watch one episode and go, oh, that's right. I've seen this.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah. Watch with your 24-year-old. Be prepared to be disappointed. Anyway. um, to sum up today, so we talked about these four movies, right? We talked about, well, not really four movies. We talked about, well, yeah, we did. We talked about Superman and The Dark Knight, and we talked about Masters of the Universe and Project Hail Mary. Um, and um, I do think we are. I do think we're experiencing a sea change in heroics on film, and I think that that's fundamentally a thing that whether it's good or bad, will time will tell. But I think it's been growing for a while, and I think the wave is starting to crash into the shore because people do need to see heroic archetypes on film. And we have gone through a season or a 25-year crisis period where heroics have been tarnished. Sincerity has been tarnished. Like the biggest sin that you can have is to be sincere, right? To genuinely believe something. And actually, what goes along with something that I've said on this show before when I talk about restoration, right? I do think that if Gen X doesn't get its act together, we will be left behind in a restoration period. I do think we will be as a generation. And I think the way you're going to be able to tell this is in the next presidential election, because the people who are going to be running for president, at least as of this, recording, the obvious candidates to run for president right now are Marco Rubio, who's a Gen Xer. He's 57, I think, or 54. Gavin Newsom, who's 57. He's a Gen Xer. I know, weird to think about it. The Joker crossed with Patrick Bateman is 57, but that's him. Kamala Harris is 60. She's on the cusp of being a Gen Xer. Okay.
yeah,
And then the next candidates down from them are JD Vance and AOC. That's your top five, folks. And JD Vance and AOC are both an older millennial, that's JD Vance, and a younger millennial, that's AOC. She's not Gen Z, she's a millennial.
yeah, she's a millennial. Yeah.
If the Gen Xers don't get their crap together, the presidency will skip us and go right to the millennials.
That's okay though, because what'll happen is the millennials will do something so dumb that the Gen X will have like you will vote the Gen X in just out of principle at that point. It's like,
Well, this gets to something else that I've been thinking for a while, which is we will be asked, I think, as a generation. We'll be pulled out of a hole sometime like 30, 40 years from now when we're all in our 70s and everybody's forgotten us. We'll be pulled out of a hole somewhere to solve a problem that Gen Z can't solve. And Gen Alpha won't have the education or the ability because like they'll be
well,
just be
they
hitting
lack critical thinking.
they lack critical thinking, right? Well, and they're just going to be like at the cusp of like coming into their adulthood at that point.
Yeah,
So they just
yeah,
won't have the life experience, right, for it.
right, right.
Um, And the millennials will be like flummoxed as to how to solve the problem with all their sincerity. They'll be very sincere about what the problem is. They will know what the problem is. They will have a meeting about the problem, but they won't actually know how to solve the problem. And I think of the bit in Armageddon when and this is a deep cut, but I think of the bit in Armageddon where Bruce Willis goes up to and the crew go up to the Russian cosmonauts and they rescue the cosmonauts from the space station and they
Yeah.
can't make the whole thing work and the Russian cosmonaut pulls out a wrench and he starts hitting things and finally it works. And he goes, "Made in Russia, made in America, all parts made in China."
Yeah.
And that's Gen X. That's it. We're just gonna hit it with a wrench when we're like 80, and then just peace out. Just leave us alone. Put us back in the hole. Like we're fine. We're
Yeah.
dead.
Put me back in the retirement home. Let me listen to Metallica in the retirement home, or like I don't know, whatever your flavor was.
Whatever your
Run
flavor is.
DMC in the retirement home because I'm telling you
Whatever.
that music is not playing in there right now.
No, we ain't playing it
But
right
when we
now.
get there, we're gonna have NWA and Run DMC or Bon Jovi and Metallica, whatever your flavor
Something.
was at that time. But
I need Poison on repeat. Pour some sugar on me, and I'll be like 90. But my point is that if we don't get our act together around sincerity, if we don't get our act together as a generation, I think we're going to miss something culturally that's actually really important. And we've kind of spoken in broad terms, broad cultural terms about archetypes and about generations on this podcast. And I this was supposed to be a lighthearted. It is. It's a lighthearted, episode because it's midsummer. It's just a nice little break for us. So I don't want anybody to take this as like what do you call it?
yeah,
Rock
we're not
ribbed,
we're not vilifying
whatever.
America here.
We're not vilifying America here. We're not vilifying generations here. We're making broad stroke generalizations and tying them to movies. And I think it's important to recognize patterns when you see them happening in culture. And I do think that Hollywood is finally trying to figure out how the hell to deal with a bifurcated audience that is bifurcated, quite frankly, along generational lines, as it always has been, but it was easier
Well, because
when
I
there were
think the
only three
generational
channels.
divide is bigger now.
Yeah, I would agree with
Right?
that.
Like
Yeah.
so like the difference between the boomers and the generation ahead of them, the World War II generation,
Hmm.
that gap was not wide. And then from the boomers to the Gen X, it widened a bit more, but it wasn't wide enough that we had to develop completely different structures because of it. I
Yeah.
think the millennials were the first ones that made that generational divide wide enough
Yeah.
that they wanted to be treated different because they were different than we were.
Right.
Right? Like now we still felt I think every generation thinks that they're different than everybody. Like that's not what I'm
Absolutely. Yeah.
arguing here. But I
Yeah.
think like Gen X, when we first got into the workforce and we were being treated the same way the boomers were when they got into the workforce, we found that normal. We were like,
Hmm.
okay, fine. We'll pay our dues and then we'll make our changes from the inside out.
Yeah.
The millennials came along and they said, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
We're not allowing you to treat us like that. We want to be treated the way we want to be treated, and you're going to like it. So they widen that generational gap. And I think Gen Z did it even more.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like
I'd agree with that.
so that's what I think is happening. The generations are kind of they're getting a grip on their own selves and they don't allow other generations to treat them differently. They
Differently.
they
Yeah.
they are forcing people to treat them the way they think they ought to be treated, not the way that the world thinks they should be treated. Now,
Well,
for
this
good or
is
bad, I don't know if it's good or bad. We can make arguments for both. I would imagine people would say good, bad, and ugly, whatever. That's just the fact that's what's happening, is all I'm saying.
yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that there has to be some kind of representation of that on film. I still think film as a medium is look, I'm passionate about film. I'll frame it this way. I'm passionate about film. I think film is a great medium. I could talk film all day. For God's sakes, I was going to do a show called Leadership Lessons from the Great Films. That was going to be like a TCM level plot thickens type,
By the
show. And
way, I just for the record, folks, I voted yes for that.
he did vote yes for that. And then I found out that like, the licensing fees were too much and I'm not, freaking Warner Brothers. Anyway, um, I'm not HBO. I can't afford that. But but I think that film is one of the greatest visual mediums that human beings have ever come up with. I still think that No, I think that even in an era of small screens and a hyper visually addicted society that we live in the United States of America, I don't know about other places, but here, heavily visually addicted society, I still think that film is the best tool we have to get across and to unite people to dreams. And I think that every generation wants to your point about generation separating, every generation wants to have its own dreams. And they want to have those dreams that are meaningful and to your point, that work for them. And I think the boomers' dreams were walked out very much in protesting the Vietnam War and protesting for civil rights. I think that was huge for them. For Gen X, our dreams were, well, we were the first generation where our dreams were sort of curdled in the curdled in the cradle a little bit because of societal conditions that happened to us that we had no control over, and then we just made the best possible thing that we could. And then when the internet came along, we were like, oh my God, we're going to go ahead and make money off of this thing because there was just no, it was an open territory. There
Yeah,
was
there's
just
no stopping us at
there was
that point.
no stopping us at that point. And by the way, even if they wanted to stop us, they couldn't. They didn't know what the hell was happening. Millennials came along in the backwash of that and had to deal with not only the bifurcated culture and the results of that, but they also had to deal with the fact that this internet thing had radically shifted how we visually communicate and how we communicate heroic archetypes, which is why it's taken so long for them to sort of make that push into the larger cultural medium of film. And then Gen Zers and Gen Alpha, like my youngest boy, I think they will be predominantly, well, Gen Z first, but then afterward, Gen Alpha will be the predominant driver on AI. And it's going to be ridiculous what they're going to produce. Um, but it will be specifically to your point, Tom, for them. It'll be,
Yeah.
and I think they need those archetypes, they need those dreams for them. And I think that's a good thing.
Speaking of which, did you see recently? I don't remember if it was Tribeca or Sundance or one of the film festivals just allowed a 100% AI produced film. I can't remember what I should have looked this up before we got on
Hmm.
today, but you I'm sure you can look it up.
Hmm.
It's about something to do the film is about I think it's about like growing up or dealing with or living through something going on in Iran. And
Hmm.
I don't know, like it's not necessarily about what's going on in Iran right this minute, but I'm saying that there
Sure.
was like there's some sort of component to of how Iran is was how has evolved into what it is and
It
living through
is.
that and trying to get out of that, out
Hmm.
from underneath that thumb. I haven't seen it yet because again, I think it's still at Tribeca or Sundance or one of those film festivals.
Hmm.
But I'm a little curious about it. I saw a trailer for it. I'm interested. It caught my attention. I'll put it that way.
Next summer, we will do another one of these special episodes on film, and we'll have a year of data.
Yeah.
I'm curious because I had not heard about this, but I'll go and look this up because so we do have an AI actress named Tilly, quote unquote,
Yeah,
that
I
has
saw that.
been, signed up to do film or whatever. We also have the Hollywood writer's strike and the Hollywood creative strike that happened a couple of years ago, where they were screaming about the existential threat of AI to to creativity. But then you had, I think it was Jodie Foster that sat up at some conference recently, some film conference recently, and basically said the movie F1 was basically an AI movie. Now, I loved F1. I thought it was amazing. I thought Brad
Yeah.
Pitt was incredible in that. Um, and I'm a huge fan of, well, not a huge fan, but I'm a fan of F1 racing. So for me, it was a fine film. But there was no, I mean, there might have been some AI used in the editing for sure,
Oh yeah, yeah.
but like those were real cars driving around a real track, Jody. Like, I don't know what you're talking about.
And by the way, whether it's AI or CGI, CGI, mean, what's the difference? Because CGI has been used in editing forever.
Right.
For
So what are we
like
objecting to?
what exactly? What are you objecting to if you're using that? And by the way, the name of the movie is called Dreams of Violets,
Okay.
and it's at Tribeca. So I was right. It
That
is
is
Tribeca.
Okay, Dreams of Violets at Tribeca. We will have to. We're going to watch this all very closely because I do. I mean, I play with AI every day.
Same.
Tom does too, and much like a typical Gen Xer, I could either be afraid of it or I can go and try to hijack it.
Yeah, we're gonna run it. What are you talking about? You're either afraid of it or you're gonna try to run it.
You're gonna try to run it. um,
Listen,
but I do.
I've been telling people my entire life, you should control what you can control and manage the rest.
Hey, there you go.
That's
That's
what
right.
Gen X does. We control whatever we can get our hands on that will allow us to control it. And if we can't, we try to manage the relationship between it since from that point on.
That's right.
That's what we do.
Well, I think that's it for today. This is a good conversation. We normally don't talk about film this extensively. I think you should go out and watch all through those movies. I don't know if you are four of those movies. I don't know if I would watch Project Hail Mary a third or fourth time. I'm not. I think I'm good. I think I got the message. I got the joke. I think I'm good.
Rocky's my spirit animal. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
I'm kidding. I'm
Wow.
kidding. I'm kidding.
Damn. I didn't know we were going that far, but all right,
We're
fine.
not. We're definitely not.
And with that, folks, well, we're out.